Wow, what a dramatic montage. Now here are some healthy, happy fish to ground us. Hello there, happy holidays, and welcome to FISHTORY. I'm Alexander Williamson, and today we're going to be talking about some of the big warning signs for fish health. When you go to the fish store and you pick out a new addition to your aquarium, what are the signs that you need to look for in order to know whether a fish is healthy and whether it's going to do well in your aquarium, whether it's going to thrive, or maybe if it does have some issues, they're issues you can treat and they're worth trying to treat, maybe because of the price, maybe because you just don't have any other options nearby to buy fish. But either way, in this video, we're going to go through and talk about those warning signs for the store and for the fish itself to let you know whether you're purchasing your new aquarium pet at a good place and whether that pet is a healthy one. All right, let's look at these beautiful rainbow fish. So these are really healthy fish. You can see that their color is really bright and vivid. You can see each species, the colors, they're lit up and they match one another when they're the same species. They've got all their scales and they don't have cloudy eyes. This is at Aquarium Co-op, and so I know they quarantine their fish. They take good care of their fish. Likewise, here is Aquarium Zen, another great shop in Seattle, and you see that stick of a fish down at the bottom? That's a farawalla, and if you have slower fish that you can't really keep track of how they're reacting health-wise, making sure they're not listing to one side or being really slow or hanging out in the corner, either the top or the bottom. You can also just look to make sure that they're breathing okay, that their eyes are tracking motion here and there, because they could be nocturnal, they could just be one of those fish. But do your research ahead of time and know what to expect and make sure that that behavior is lining up with what you've researched. Also, if you know the shop, that's the best way to check things out. Ask if they quarantine, and if they do, that's great. If they don't, you should at home. And also still look for the healthiest fish you can find. If there are fish in the tank that aren't healthy, you can always skip that shop and go somewhere else. Speaking of somewhere else, here we are at a big box pet store in town, and you can see just by the looks of the tank that the upkeep is a little lacking. There's an outbreak of cyanobacteria here and algae, and even though the fish may look healthy, they could have arrived today, so you want to ask them, when did these fish get here? How have they been? Did you lose any? And a lot of times people will be straight up with you and tell you. So you want to remember that if you bring these fish home, they could bring that bacteria, that algae or that cyanobacteria back to your tank and cause all sorts of headaches for you and your plants in the future. So it's something to consider, something to talk with your manager at the local store about, and ask how the fish have been doing when they came in. Also, it's a good reason to quarantine your fish. Now, there's other things besides, these iffy situations where you see a fish and you think there's a dead fish. That must mean there's something really terribly wrong with this whole store. And, I'm here to tell you I've worked in a lot of stores, and that's not always the case. However, you can see here, this is one tank. All four of those sections are one tank with a bunch of different fish. So if there is one that is dead, it can be a sign that there's going to be more with a problem. And speaking of problems, look at this little guy. That is a bent spine, and that means the genetics of whoever is breeding the fish are compromised, or they're at least not paying attention to what goes out. So it's a good sign that you might want to pick something else. And speaking of picking something else, here is a danio in a dense school of danios with what looks like a fungus or bacterial disease. It could be a parasite healing up, it could even be a wound healing up, but it's something I wouldn't take a chance on. This actually alarms me more than a dead fish or more than a bent spine. Some people even want to adopt the bent spine fish to give them a good home. This, however, is something that could be more insidious. Likewise, when you're watching your fish, whether they're little or big, if they aren't behaving quite right, like this one's leaning to the side no matter what, it may mean it has a swim bladder issue, or it may mean something more serious even. So I'd avoid those. And likewise, when you're observing fish, here's a really popular nano fish, and sometimes it's hard to see, but these fish are notorious for getting underfed, so it's hard to tell sometimes whether they're just skinny or like this one in the center of the frame at the moment. Now he's on the far left, and there's another one in the center of the frame now moving towards the left. They have really skinny bellies, and for me, that's a little too skinny, and I would be worried that they have parasites. So if I picked them out, I'd take them home and treat them for that. Likewise here, the fins are all torn up. So this may be a sign that they were shipped too tightly with a bunch of other fish, or it may be a sign that they're in a tank that's just not the right mix of fish, that they're an aggressive fish perhaps. And although the fins are not always a no-go, they can turn into bacterial or fungal infections, which can be harder to treat. Something you can't treat is a missing eye, but this fish here has healed up really well, and actually I wouldn't worry about taking it home. Now, fish body language is important, and their tail, their fins, if they're tight together like these ones, when they should be kind of open and flowy, that could tell you that there's something stressing them. And ta-da, there's a dead fish in the corner of the tank. So they could have elevated ammonia because, yet again, these tanks are shared. They're on one water system. So, again, clamp fins. Now, something else I tell folks to look at is the store in general. Is it orderly? I mean, do they take some pride in what they're doing? That doesn't always tell you how good the fish are or where they source them or if they're going to be healthy, but it can give you a good indication on how things are going. You know, are their tanks stocked or are they really empty? You know, are there staff around that are helpful? These are just little things that can help give you a little more sense of peace of mind when you're picking out fish. All right, now another thing I would look for is fish that are missing parts. So you need to know your fish well, but this one's missing its whiskers. And Corydoras should have their onodontodes, their little barbels to feel around, but they can lose them due to fungal or bacterial infections. Now, I have a whole episode on this. It's a little more nuanced than that, but I would probably stay away from that guy and would be much more inclined to buy one of the many species of Corys you can find elsewhere. And here we are at Aquarium Co-op again, not sponsored or anything, just saying they do keep very healthy, happy fish that are moving around and very colorful, look happy. Alright, now speaking of special cases, again, kind of in the middle, like here's a fish that looks like he's struggling a little bit. The one with the red on his head there behind the other two. We'll see him again in a moment here, but his dorsal fin's a little chewed up. He's missing some scales on his side, and he may even have a little red mark on him. Now, this could be from fighting from the other fish. It could be from transit. It's hard to know, and sometimes you fall in love with a derpy fish for one reason or another, and you want to try to help it. You want to bring it home and treat it. So with these fish that are kind of these borderline cases, especially when everyone else looks healthy, here are a few things you can do. Alright, now say you want to treat these things. Ick is a really common problem. These little white dots, you can see it on the fin there. They can be subtle, but it is a super common problem, and it will spread to a lot of species. Most species can get it. Some it doesn't show very well. Others, it just takes over in a day or two and they pass away. See on the tail there? That's what you're looking for. Little subtle white dots. Sorry, it's not a little clearer. But I'd buy Ick X, or you can just turn the temperature up to 86 and hurry along the life cycle, do lots of water changes. But along with that, it is a parasite, and there's other parasites too. And I would get something like this Paracleanse. You know, I was at Aquarium Co-op, and they've got a good selection of stuff. So will a lot of online shops, and even the big box stores will too. But another one you may want is Maricin, which is a gram-positive antibiotic. It will treat patchy spots on the fish, and it's going to have erythromycin as the active ingredient if you look closely. And again, you're going to want to do water changes, follow the instruction, and so forth. And lastly, my magic bullet is going to be Expel P by Fritz, which is just levamisole. There's how you spell it there. And it is a dewormer and anti-parasitical, and it is very strong, so use it as directed pretty sparingly. And while you're at the shop, get some test kits, make sure that you're testing your water, get some things to make your fish cozy. With all this information, hopefully you can get a really healthy fish from a shop. You know, one last little tip I'm going to give you here is look at their display tanks and see how their fish are doing long term. Go in and check in with them. See if they're colorful, if they're shimmering, you know, if the plants are healthy, if they're doing plants, and if the fish are healthy, if they're there for multiple weeks on end. All of this will lead to a much better fish buying experience, and hopefully all this info will help you. Now, by the way, their tails and spines aren't crooked. These two are mating, which is a surefire sign that they're very happy at this store Aquarium's in. You guys made it to the end. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it when you guys make it all the way through these videos. It means a lot to me. When you do so, I assume you enjoyed the video. So if you could hit that like button, if you could leave a comment of some of the things you use to pick out a healthy fish, I'd love that. It really does help the video and the algorithm and, you know, all that stuff. So I really do appreciate it, and thank you for your time. I hope you have a happy holidays, and I will see you guys next time on FISHTORY.